This week's episode is brought to you by the legends over at Cayuga Broadheads. I've been jumping between using the pilot cuts and the Zots for quite a while now, and to be honest, I can't pick which is my favourite because I like them both pretty much. I can interchange whichever broadhead I like and shoot them. If I wanted to, I could run 3 Zots in the quiver and 2 pilot cuts, or vice versa, because the accuracy on them is just that good. The next side to it is that your pilot cuts also come with a bleeder blade. Now, I've always kind of just gone with like the easiest method, which was not using the bleeder blade. But on the last hunt I was on, I got to see many critters taken down with the 4 blade in particular, and just to see the extra blood trail, the extra wound that it actually makes using the bleeder blades. I'm definitely going to be using the bleeder blades moving forward whenever I'm rolling with the pilot cuts. But the exciting thing about all of this and them sponsoring the podcast is that you guys actually get 10% off of your next order when you head over to Cayuga Broadheads to their website and use the code BAB10. That's caps locks BAB10 at cayugabroadheads.com.au. Also sponsoring the podcast this week is Dog and Gun Coffee, and Dog and Gun have been supporting the podcast for a long time, and I'm very, very grateful to them, and I absolutely love their coffee. I have on subscription every single month. I get at a discounted rate because of the subscription, the bag of Samba, and I talk about it all the time because I honestly really, really like it. However, what I think is really cool with Dog and Gun is that they collaborate with different people and do different blends each month. And right now they've got the Field Days blend or brew going. And essentially it's another dark brew that you guys can get, and you can get $10 off of that order when you use the code Bowhunter. That's all in caps locks, Bowhunter, and that will get you $10 off of your next order at Dog and Gun Coffee. You don't necessarily have to get the Field Days, but it is a limited subscription, a limited deal, so it's like, why not grab that while you're there? But also they offer, obviously, their hot chocolates. They offer a range of different coffees. They've got some cool merch on offer, and they also have like knives and cool other coffee accessories that you can use. The knives that they've just released, the Axis, I got to use it when I was in camp a few weeks ago, and it was awesome. I used it to take cape out of face and take a cape out of head, I guess, of my billy goat. And to be honest, I was very, very impressed with how good this knife was. So you guys can get the benefit of $10 off of your next order when you use that code Bowhunter over at dogandguncoffee.com.
Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
What is up, legend? Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bow Hunter. Today, sitting down with 2 of our brothers from across the pond, we've got Toby Nicholls and Struan Purdie. Struan was the man behind the camera on this recent hunting trip that I went on. And Toby was kind of the brains behind the whole situation. So realistically, if you haven't been following along, what happened was we got a cool opportunity recently where Toby reached out and said, look, I know the crew from Bushbuck, they're trying to break into the Australian market, especially in the bow hunting scene. What do you think about trying out their gear and getting filmed while you're trialing it out? Pretty much we're going to deck you out with the clothes and we'll go for a hunt. And I was like, that's amazing. Let's see how we can make it happen. And pretty much for that to happen, for it to be an incredible experience for everyone involved, I knew that I had to pull in a few favors, hence why we ended up down at Randy Rand's block, and Grant was very nice to have us along. Always grateful for him sharing his space with us, but it was cool because it obviously opened the invitation to him to be able to try out their clothing, and there is some more podcasts to come. We do give kind of our full insights on what our thoughts were on the Bushbuck gear, but in this podcast, this was when we very first got into camp, and it's kind of the conversations about what Struan and Toby have done in the past, and they've both got some really cool experiences and stories to share from New Zealand, as well as just kind of talking about hunting in New Zealand in general, and kind of the lay of the land, the hierarchy of the animals, and just their perspective on the best hunts that you can possibly do within New Zealand. So if you're at all interested in getting over to New Zealand, this podcast is going to be a ripper of an episode for you, because you've literally got local knowledge, and both the boys are very happy to kind of hear more from you if you've got questions. So feel free to reach out to them. But yeah, I'll shut up and let you guys enjoy the episode. Thanks for being here, team. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Becoming a Bowhunter. We're sitting in camp. I've got Mr. Struan Purdie with me, as well as Mr. Toby Nicholls. So, interesting little story. We actually figured out, I thought it was February, but Toby hit me up in April. We were talking a little bit via social media anyway, and you just kind of came to me, and you were, I can't remember how it went down. We were pretty much talking about our ruts in general as to what we had going on, and then you were like, hey, dude, I've got a pretty interesting idea. What do you reckon about this? And then you called me and said, hey, I used to work with Bushbuck. There's an opportunity where they're trying to break into the Australian market, and they want to break into especially the bow hunting market. What do you think about getting decked out in their clothes and going on a hunt, and we film it all? I'm like, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, man. It was a while ago, and I think it wasn't even like... It's always hard asking for, hunting access and opportunities. So it was more, I think the initial conversation was like, do you know anyone even? And just because I figured you'd know people in the industry. And then you sort of said, I'd be real keen. And then you knew Grant as well, which was kind of where we ended up here, eh?
Well, yeah, so I knew it was never going to work out if I was to ask my auntie and uncle. They're like, I mean, getting on their block's hard enough, let alone filming on their block. So I said, well, is it open to other people? Because if it's open to others, then I've definitely got an opportunity for it. And you're like, yeah, let's put it forward to them. And originally we kind of talked about doing it as a backpack hunt, and that's why I thought of Grant straight away, because we'd talked about doing that. Last time I was here with Grant on his block, he's like, man, we could do a backpack hunt from one side to the other. It would take us 2 days to do. You'd have 2 camp outs and whatever else. He's like, we could even plan it out so we have cars parked all over the property if we need to. So whenever we get an animal down, we're not wasting it. Like we're getting the meat, we're getting all back.
Hunting.
Exactly. And so I was like, it worked out really well. But then it's kind of changed and developed since then, which is fine, because we're still here, and really getting out for a hunt is always fun anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's pretty cool for me, I guess, because being relatively new to Australia, finding access is the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So that was part of it. Was like, okay, well, let's see if we can find somewhere to go hunting and put this trip together. And for me, try and hopefully get my first bow animal, and get bushbuck gear out here and into the environment here and see what it's like.
So 2 parts to that, because you've got a history within bushbuck. What does that look like?
So I just genuinely gotten interested as a customer. Like I bought all the kit, honestly, it was probably 10 years ago, and then became friends with Tim, who was at that point, was like classic entrepreneur running it from home. Mm-hmm. Everyone that could be involved was involved, and we got chatting over probably 6 months. I just bought everything. I loved it, and then he came to me one day and said, "Oh, hey man, I'm sort of looking for someone to help out a little bit, and who understands hunting." And I was like, "Yeah, man, pretty keen." And so we went on a hunt together. He had this old, like 1980s Lada 4-wheel drive, like absolute heap of shit, and I had an old tinny, also a heap of shit, and we towed it up into the mountains, and the Lada barely made it, and we navigated across Lake Sumner, which is about 5 k's wide, at 10 o'clock at night using an iPhone. Like it was just like fraught with danger.
What do you mean? Like it's just like like you're literally driving through the water?
Yeah, just in pitch black, driving across a mountain lake and trying to find this little cove. And we set up a fire on the beach. It was pretty cold. And we stayed up chatting about hunting gear till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Went for a very brief hunt in the morning. Weather was coming in, so we busted away. But that was kind of the start of my friendship with Tim.
It's kind of classic New Zealand hunting too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was a very brief hunt, to be honest, but from there, got involved and became a shareholder for a minor shareholder, but got to help Tim in the first early years grow the business, and then he just took it from strength to strength.
Yeah.
I sort of stayed on as an ambassador more than anything, and that's where Struan and I met. So we did a few. Tim would ring up, hey man, we want to do some photos on Thursday. Are you free? I'm like, yeah man, I'm free. And then we'd bust off to the mountains, and Struan will be sort of directing us to take photos and stuff.
Take the poses, do the things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then probably a couple of years ago, I kind of stepped back as a shareholder, just moved on from that, but have built heaps of friendships.
It's kind of as you're moving over to Australia, right?
Yeah, and I'm really lucky that even though I'm not involved in any sort of official capacity, they've always been really good to me. Even on my raw trip back to New Zealand, the guys were awesome enough to lend me a tent and a sleeping bag, and like the tent's probably the hardest thing to get through customs, so I was really grateful for that.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and then I guess also it's tested gear for that location, right? You know it's going to work in New Zealand, so exactly what you want. And so your history is more so with a rifle, right? Like you kind of have always been rifle hunter. You went down to long range stuff, and then only recently got into bow.
Yeah, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, there's no way I'd be a bow hunter. Like it's hard enough to kill a deer with a rifle.
Not one of them knobs.
100%. Like, Struan, this is your cue, mate.
I'm waiting my turn.
But that's what I grew up with, man. I grew up with rifle hunting, and I think bow hunting is it's growing in New Zealand, but it's way more prevalent for bow hunting. I actually grew up with...
what you reckon in Australia is more prevalent?
Yeah, bow hunting, 100%.
Yeah, wow.
You Struan?
Yeah, definitely 100%.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, the laws are a little less stringent in Australia. In New Zealand. So
yeah, exactly. You can hunt everywhere.
You can hunt with a rifle. You can have a suppressor, which is awesome for one, obviously hearing. For your hearing.
Yeah.
But also the animals don't know where you're shooting from.
How quiet is the suppressor in the sense
probably
of...
cuts at 30%.
Okay, so you still have a fair bang.
It's still a fair bang, but it's non-directional, so you
kind of disperses it everywhere.
Yeah, so there's two noises in a gunshot. You have the gas releasing from the barrel, and then you have the bullet breaking the sound barrier.
Yeah.
So the suppressor stops the gas noise, which is directional. The sound barrier crack is not directional, so the deer won't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. Okay.
So they'll know something's up, but often if you take a longer shot and miss, you'll have a second crack at it.
Yeah.
With
Okay.
the suppressor, but also. I mean, it's just much more pleasant, If you're shooting a high caliber rifle, it's
not going to damage your ears as much. I was actually at the archery range the other day, and a guy started talking to us about he's going to get into hunting. He's going to do it with air rifles. I'm like, what do you mean, like little pellets? He's like, nah, man, like you can get 308s and higher that are air rifles. I'm
really?
Like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah. You shoot it, and then essentially you just need like a couple of seconds. I think he said 8 seconds. Every 8 seconds, you can put off a new round.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. So it's not good for like.
You want to be a good shot, then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but at the same time, 8 seconds is a fair chunk.
Yeah.
You'd hope you're a good shot.
Yeah. Oh no, essentially, well, that's sort of I started with the rifles, and then as you said, like I got into the long range stuff and the hand loading.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky. A buddy of mine was he's a real practical dude, and was really willing to share the knowledge around how to do it.
Yeah.
And then that was just kind of geeking out a little bit, and which is why I found it interesting in archery as well, because you get to tweak stuff and refine stuff, and it's... Yeah,
okay. I often hear that people will go one of two ways: to see the long range, or they go into the archery side. So it's interesting that's... Oh, you went both ways. You weren't set on one, so you went both.
Yeah, it took moving across to Australia to do that, though. Like,
yeah, definitely. Are you going out for a hunt? That's hilarious. That's good. We will be. Yeah, that's awesome. That's Corey in the background. You'll hear from him on the next episode, I'm sure. And so you said that you have taken one goat, though, haven't you, with the bow?
Yeah, I shot a goat back in New Zealand, actually.
Okay.
It was the first animal I shot. It wasn't a very big one, but it died so fast. It was the first time I'd seen an animal die with a bow shot.
Yeah.
It came through, was quartering away, so it went through just behind the rib cage and out the front shoulder, and it was down in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, all right, I think this is going to work.
Yeah. It does do the job.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen... Yeah, I just didn't think it was going to be a great way to hunt. But then once I started shooting targets and getting sort of addicted to that, and then following the YouTube and seeing what people are doing, and then getting out in the field myself and getting close to animals, and like, okay, this is addictive. It's
very addictive. Yeah. It definitely kind of controls you a little bit in a sense. Like I found that, at least when I first got into bow hunting, is like consuming of the mind to an extent. I think hunting is in general, right? It's any new hobby you get into as an adult. I think you start to get that in a sense. But I definitely found that with bow hunting.
Yeah, I tend to, when I get into something, I tend to kind of be quite focused on it.
Yeah.
Like probably to an extent that's maybe a bit too much, but that's what happened with archery. So I got a bow. I was down in Melbourne. I had a couple of months sort of to myself before the family came over. And so I was trying to find things to do. So I went to a small bow shop down there, Liza's Archery. That little range was like, I don't know, $30 to have an hour session. So I went and shot a compound bow, had a good time doing that. And then when the family came over, I actually took them along as well. We had a 5-year-old, so he was loving it. My wife had a go; she enjoyed it.
Yep.
And then I bought a bow. We were living in like Western Sydney, so really like quite high density living. But I had a 20-meter range where if I reached out either side, I could touch my house and the neighbours. So it was just enough to be shooting. I did have a safe backstop, but because I was working from home, I could let off 20, 30 arrows a day.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anyone, so. It was just okay, cool. Right, well, this is what I'm going to do, and it was.
So, what bow did you end up going with?
I ended up. I bought a Diamond Edge 320, so it was a middle of the range bow. I think I paid with the ready to hunt kit and the hard case, it was about $1,300.
Yep.
And I know now that I was doing everything wrong, but I just bought it and took it home, and I was shooting arrows.
What do you mean you were doing everything wrong?
I was shooting wrong. So,
got you. I thought you meant like in regards to purchasing the bow.
No, I think it was a great. So why I bought that one is that it was adjustable from 15 to 70 pounds.
Yep.
So it meant I could start low and work up.
Hand it down to your son when you're ready and everything. Yeah.
That's right. And that's probably all I could afford at the time anyway. Without getting in trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but I probably after a couple months, I was shooting like a dinner plate at 20, like consistently, and I had started to follow people online. Yeah, and I found Ian Summers, who you may know. Yes, a
little bit.
And he didn't live very far away, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go and do an archery, a bow tuning session is what I wanted, right? Yeah, and my wife's like, you don't need training. Like, you're shooting a dinner plate. This is easy. I'm like, okay, sweet, but I'm going to go anyway because I reckon he could tune this bow up, make it like way better. Yeah. And that's in my head what was going to happen, right? Because it's an entry-level bow. So I go around to see Ian, and he's like, yeah, man, all right, I want you to shoot into this paper, and we'll see what the arrow's doing. So I let an arrow off. It goes through the paper sideways, and then in my head, Ian's going to take the bow from me. He's going to do some magic on it, and then it's going to be super accurate, and I'm going to be like a sniper. No, he's like, okay, well, firstly, you're throttling the shit out of the bow, like you're strangling it. So I'm holding on to it tight and strong. And then, I didn't have the anchor right. I was like punching the trigger, like everything was off. Yeah. And he was awesome though, like phenomenal. He's like, hey man, this is how we're going to do this. We're going to relax with the shot. And he helped me basically build a shot sequence.
Yeah, shot process up and go from there. And difference?
Oh, massive difference. So he said...
Next shot, even?
Next shot was going through straight. So we straightened up the arrows.
That's a big
with
difference.
That. Yeah. And I don't even know if we went out to 20 or anything like that. What he said is, I want you to go home and shoot for the next 2 weeks. It was like 1,000 arrows or something. It wasn't that much, but it was a number. Anyway, it was up to 20 at a session. Yep. If you're getting fatigued, stop.
Metre and
shooting it, metre and a half. And so I would go into the garage after we'd put my son to bed, and I would be talking to myself, right? So I'd say like grip, and I'd grip the bow like nice and focus on that, and then I would draw back, and I would make sure it was anchored right. I would relax, breathe, and then I would pull through. And if anything was wrong, you'd focus on that, and just did that just religiously till I built that
process,
muscle memory, and it just made a huge difference. Yeah,
definitely. And so you haven't actually had the chance to do it on an animal yet, and that's what we're going to do this weekend.
Yeah, I nearly did a couple of months ago in the state forest. I went through the sequence with this fellow, and I was like, in my head it was perfect, but it took off. So,
what was the other story about the? Tell us about the big pig.
Yeah, so well, I mean, I went on to a state forest hunt, and I had the goal that I wanted to just go and check it out. I didn't know anyone to hunt with in Australia, so. Dropped my son at school, went into the state forest. I'd been e-scouting, like where I wanted to go. I had it in my head where I was going to go, and it was quite far into the state forest. So the minute I hit a piece of the state forest, I jump off the road and go for a walk because I was a bit early. So I couldn't help myself. Yeah. got back to the car and had a bit of lunch, and then decided I was gonna go down the fire break that I wanted to walk down. So I start off driving to that spot, and I see 3 fallow deer. I'm like, okay, cool. This is awesome. We're in the right spot. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
I've done something right here, hopefully. And where I had sort of figured out I wanted to go, there was farmland on one side of the state forest, and there was a national park on the other, and really good access ways and good water. So I thought, well, this looks like an area where animals might hang out. They might be traveling from A to B. And as I'm driving in, I start to think I'm the guru, because there's a pig like walking from A to B, like across the road in front of this massive pig, jumps into the national park. So it was cool to see him.
Yeah.
And then, so I park up and I start walking down the road. And this is where the Kiwi hunter sort of kicks in, because I'm like, there's kangaroos everywhere. I do not know what this means. Like, do deer respond to kangaroos? Are they looking at them for alertness? Does it mean there's no deer here? I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, I start sort of.
Do you know yet?
I don't really know. The deer don't mind, right?
I mean, sometimes you do have to be you have to be careful with the kangaroos, because if they all jump off at once,
Yeah, I figured.
then definitely the deer are going
It's
to run
kinda like
away,
farm
or the
animals
pigs are
in
going
New
to run
Zealand.
away, or
Yeah,
whatever's around them. But at the same time, they're so alert, and so much more alert usually than the other animals. Like I've had pig hunts, for instance, and you're like, just that one kangaroo, just move off, and you're like trying to budge just one off, rather than all 10 of them at once, and so you try to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I think all animals are definitely alert of each other to some degree. You do have to manage them.
That's kind of what I figured, you know,
Yeah.
because you do, like, I mean, in New Zealand, some of the high country stations, you're trying to like sidle past sheep, and they might just walk on the same track as you for like a kilometre
And follow you.
trying to get past them. Or
Yeah.
the paradise ducks are the worst. They like squawk and alert everything. And
Yeah, got you.
yeah, but yeah. So then I was walking further down that track, and I ducked off into the forest. There were some clearings I wanted to check out, and I heard this noise, and I look over there. I'm like, oh, there's a pig. Awesome! I'm going to get like it's going to be a pig. That's what I'm going to get my first bow kill. And I'm like, before I drew back, I was just like thinking, this is a fluffy looking pig, eh? And then I was like, oh, I think that's a wombat, so probably shouldn't shoot that. And then again, like I'm like, well, what do wombats do? Are they aggressive? I don't know. I'm just going to leave that thing alone.
I think unless they've got mange, they're pretty chill.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, man. You could have steered me the other way.
I could have, yeah, exactly. Turns into a drop hair, and then that's the thing. No, but at the same time, I mean, it's pretty good, because you hear of a lot of people going to state forest and not finding anything.
Yeah.
So you did well in the sense of, and I think this is really where home comes back into play for you, because that's essentially the way you guys hunt, right? You'll look at the topography.
Yeah,
I got there eventually. Jesus, it's been a long day.
Well done, buddy.
The topography of a map, and you'll figure out where the best places to go based on, like, you have monster mountains and ridges and things you kind of have to look at and say, this could be a good place, right?
You have to
like
get
you've got
pretty
that
good at
much
reading maps,
much country to hunt, essentially, right? Over there.
Yeah.
So that then coming into play over here, I think that's definitely like an upper advantage that you'd have from word go. Where'd you even learn how to do that side of things? Like reading the maps and...
Well, I mean, we're all really lucky, right? We have so many different online resources. You know, all the like the topo maps, and like NZ topo maps in New Zealand. You can sort of scan between the like satellite images and the topos, so you can kind of start to feel for it.
What,
and then
is that an app? Did you say?
it's a website, and then that's like Avenza or I think Backcountry Navigator is it's a program I use here. And then you've obviously got in New South Wales, you've got the DPI maps, and then you overlay it with Google Earth, and you can download them to Google Earth, and you can just, again, like focus on it and spend weeks just kind of figuring out, this is where I think it's going to be like. And I mean, one of the hard parts in New Zealand is you're like, this looks great, and then you get there, you're like, man, this is way steeper than I thought, right? Like, yeah. And then you take all that sort of research that you're doing, and you're trying to think like, what would be, a good place for me to hit up, and what would be good, area where animals might be. You're looking for, different times of year, you're looking for sunny faces in the morning in summer, or water in winter, or water in summer. And then you take all of that kind of guesswork and bullshit that you put together, and then you go out there and you figure it out, and you see like what actually happened, and you take that knowledge and you apply it to the next hunt. Yeah, it's just hard work. It's like anyone.
It's a collection. Yeah, that's crazy. So Struan, welcome to the country, first of all.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. It feels like I left New Zealand at 1 o'clock in the morning Australia time, and it's now about 8 o'clock in New Zealand time. So it feels like days, but I made it here. So it's thanks for having me, man.
A big day. Yeah, I'm excited for this little trip in general. I mean, like I said before, hunting in general is always fun. But then for a new experience like this with new friends, it's always even more fun, right? It's cool. And is this your first time hunting in Australia?
Yeah, it is. It's my first time hunting in Australia, first time hunting outside of New Zealand, actually. So
wow,
pumped. Yeah,
yeah, that's really cool. I think, in all honesty, we've brought you to like a little haven. Like I've talked about this place as being one of my favorite hunts ever in regards to the amount of critters that they've got here. And I hope I'm not jinxing it based on what I saw last year. Like you'd walk in one direction, like there's deer, oh there's goats there, oh there's pigs there, like, and so hopefully it all kind of plays out to be that same piece. And based on what Corey and Grant said from when they did a little reco a few weeks ago, it's looking like that. So we're in for a good few days. So mainly hunting New Zealand, but what are some of the projects you've kind of worked on over the last few years?
Yeah, so I've been working with Tim and the guys from Bushbuck for a long time now. They're sort of one of my oldest clients, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool. Like Toby said, sort of tracing that journey along with them from from humble beginnings to seeing, I guess, them build out the brand and build out the gear and it's good. So with them, with Bushbuck, I've been really fortunate to go on a whole lot of awesome missions in that sense, and down to Fiordland, did a lot of spearfishing up in the Coromandel with them, a shoot which was a great
because they run seabuck as well.
They run
right?
seabuck, man, yeah. So we ended up scoring about 25 meters viz, which is unheard of, off the Coromandel Peninsula, and able to dive with some incredible divers, some incredible conditions. So as a photographer, I think it's sort of almost revitalized my love of hunting, actually, because
that's cool.
Yeah, a lot of time I'm carrying a camera more than I'm carrying a rifle these days, actually, and I've hunted all of my life. I started when I was really young. And I've done it a lot for work as well, but in recent years, and particularly working with Bushbuck in terms of just being able to throw a whole lot of creative freedom in there and actually suggest trips and suggest shoots and that sort of thing. So it's been an awesome one, man.
Definitely.
Yeah. Outside of that, I think the craziest place I've ever filmed was we got a chance to go up into the Arctic, up into Greenland.
No way.
I was doing some study up in Denmark, and we got a chance to go and film a documentary up in Greenland. We had some funding, and we knew we were going. We just didn't know what story we were going to tell. So we were busy researching. We ended up telling the story about these seal hunters up in Greenland. And there was a bit of an affinity because New Zealand is, it's a hunting fishing culture. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Greenlanders as well. That's how they live. That's how they survive. So we found ourselves bobbing around in the ocean of Greenland with some Inuit seal hunters that spoke no English, trying to shoot these seals and then hook them with the gaff before they sunk. This is how they survive. So it was a hell of an experience, But one thing that I always remember from there, we came back one night and we were sitting around a table with all these Inuits and all the young kids they could translate, So we're talking to them, and we're talking about hunting this and that, and we they're asking us what are you hunting in New Zealand, and we said this and that, and we talked about wallabies because they're a huge pest in New Zealand, and they couldn't believe it. They said, "You hunt baby kangaroos." Like, they looked at us like we're absolute nerds. And I sort of said, look, guys, we're literally eating a sperm whale right here. Like, we're not real big on whaling in New Zealand either. But it was a great eye-opener for me in terms of just everything has cultural and perceptive values attached to it, And so it really opened my eyes to kind of different cultures in hunting and different parts of the world, So.
100%. I've got a mate who's a really big into spearfishing, like really, really big. His dad, I think he's got the record for blackfin tuna in the southern hemisphere, maybe, like largest one done with a spear gun. And he's like, I don't know how they go and hunt those black bear. I'm like, bro, it's pretty much the same thing as what you're doing, just in a different concept. Like, it's same, but different. But yeah, how did you get into the photography filming side of things, and how did that kind of become a bit of an actual career for you?
Yeah, so photography was always a bit of a passion. Did it through high school and stuff. Didn't think too much more of it after that. But after traveling a bit, went back and actually my study and became a journalist. So I guess I've always been a storyteller in that sense. So worked in mainstream media, mainstream journalism in New Zealand for a number of years, and then just got sick of news, man. Like
the negative BS all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, the best day in news is the worst day in someone else's life.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so I actually the first client I approached outside of when I flicked the news job was a commercial hunting guide in New Zealand. He was a friend of my uncle's.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's such a thing over here in Aussie. There's only a huge industry in New Zealand in terms of these rich Americans coming over, generally Americans.
I think there's parts of it in Australia that are, but it's definitely probably not as big. I don't know. Like, I mean, there's definitely a lot of, especially up north, there's a lot of hunting guides on the buffalo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is for the deer, definitely, like red deer and whatever else. But I think I don't honestly know, but I would say that if someone's coming for a red deer, they'd go to New Zealand from America. I'm not definite, but I kind of feel that would be the way.
100% they would. Yeah, I think they're coming here for the big water buffalo. And
a bit more of the bovine type of stuff, and the pigs and whatever else.
So I put a proposal in front of this guy saying, "Look, let's film your hunts for your clients. We'll sell the films to your clients, and we'll use those also that footage to market your business." So I did 4 or 5 years, right up until COVID, really.
Wow. Just with this one brand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was my first client in that sense, and that was sort of took up a fair bit of my time for 4 months of the year. That's the season over in New Zealand.
And you're there every day filming every single hunt?
Yeah,
or was it only...
it varied. Yeah, but it was pretty full on there. So I didn't see a whole lot of my wife and her family, but it was cool. Got seeing some incredible things,
Yeah.
And I mean, the commercial hunting guiding industry in New Zealand is somewhat controversial, shall we say?
Yeah, okay.
Because I wouldn't say it's hunting, to be honest. It's
gotcha.
A lot of it's high fence. A lot of it's high fence for animals, and then also there's the aerial assisted hunting, so heli hunting for the tahr and the chamois.
Got you. They bring them into you.
Yeah, oh no.
They drop you off at them.
Not necessarily bring them into you, but you are using a helicopter on dock land.
Oh, so you'll go up in the helicopter and shoot from the helicopter?
No, so what they're doing is using the helicopter to locate the animals and then dropping the hunters out. They're essentially flopping down on their bellies and shooting them, So
wow. And this is all rifle stuff, right?
Like it's all rifle stuff. Yeah, no, we did have a number of bow hunters come out from the States. So it was interesting. We met some incredible bow hunters and met some absolute battlers,
Yeah.
So many tales from that time, but it was incredible. And I think the one thing that I took away from it is you get to spend 5, 6, 7 days in the middle of nowhere with these people who are really well established. Like they're obviously incredibly wealthy, so they've all got amazing stories from what they've done in their lives and stuff. You know what I mean? And you're on a level with them, man. Like you're eating the same food, you're riding the same vehicles, and actually they're way out of their depths. They're mostly Texans. They're not used to walking on any sort of incline. So it's it's cool. Made a lot of cool friends, man, and still keep in touch with a lot of them. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I kind of had a bit of a realization when I was a bit younger. Like, when I was playing in bands, we started playing with these bands that were like world famous bands, and we'd be touring with them, and it's all of a sudden like, oh, you're just another human. And then when I started to get big into the CrossFit world and my wife was working for CrossFit headquarters, we'd go out to CrossFit headquaters and meet like all the big dogs of CrossFit. And it was just like you just have a conversation with them. They're just humans. And you're like, you quickly realize like, oh, they're just the same as me. They're just maybe more well established in some sort of certain situation. Oh my God. Words aren't happening for me tonight. But yeah, it's interesting. I think as soon as you kind of understand that people are just people, it makes it a lot easier to just get on and have fun, right? Like you kind of put down that barrier and get down their barriers, and then you're just good to go in that sort of situation.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a little bit like I was talking about in the Greenland thing. It's kind of, for me, going over to the States and doing the shows, Safari Club International and that sort of thing, and actually meeting these people in their own hometowns, being there, it gave me a lot of perspective, thinking, man, I can't believe these dudes are going over to, Africa and shooting lions and shooting this and that. But I'm like, once I see you in Texas and see the hunting culture, which is, I mean, we think we have a hunting culture in New Zealand. We have nothing. The Americans love it. You know,
yeah.
I'd think, I can really appreciate this. I'd be the same if I was brought up in this, if I lived and breathed it like you guys did. So
Definitely. It's wild to hear you say that, because hunting in New Zealand, it's like an everyday piece, versus here in Australia, like I almost feel like you could walk into your local town, I'm sure, in your camo and not get any sort of grief or whatever else. Whereas I don't know if that's the same here in Australia.
we
Like,
were talking about that.
I think parts of it, yes, and other parts maybe not. Like I think you'd get questioned about why you're in it, or I don't know, maybe you wouldn't. I'm not really sure because I've never really done it much, but it's not to the extent, like one of my mates was on a ride in New Zealand in April, and he sent me this photo of the stag on the back of someone's ute, and they're literally just parked in the middle of town, and then they've got this monster stag on there that's been gutted out.
That's pretty common.
Yeah. And that wouldn't happen in Australia. And I think there's actually laws against you being able to traffic or move your wild game, even within, like, you can't, like, if I shot say for instance I was in Queensland and I shot a deer on my block that's 2 hours away, I couldn't drive it back as a whole piece to Brisbane to be able to butcher it up, which is kind of crazy, right? It's like it's still stock that's been shot, but versus like that's completely normal.
It's interesting though, because I think in some ways a lot of the rules around hunting in Australia are a little bit more advanced than New Zealand.
Okay, in
not,
what way?
Not always for the best, but I think, I mean, even I apologise if I get it wrong, but I think this, you have to specify that you have to shoot in the vital zone. You're not supposed to do headshots, and you're supposed to try and recover them really quickly. That's legislation here, but in New Zealand, they're a pest. You can hit them with a baseball bat if you wanted to. Like I'm not saying do that.
But
it's like it's unregulated.
Yeah,
you can go out and hunt every day of the year and shoot as many as you want.
And I wonder if that's because you've got no predators, right? There's no predator species that can.
I think they're just treated with just a bit more malice by the departments. They just I mean the rules against animal cruelty don't apply in law to wild pests.
Yeah, got you. As soon as so if it's marked as a pest species, it's completely different.
Yeah.
It's seen different.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, that's exactly what the RSPCA are playing on here in Australia, right? To try and ban bow hunting and ban everything.
Yeah.
But yet they I'm pretty certain they're the ones that are mainly backing the poisoning, which is like one of the most cruel things I've ever seen. So it's bizarre.
Yeah, I think for New Zealand, I mean, the people like the Big Game Animal Council, they're doing an awesome job of trying to get some legislation over the line to actually start, I guess, treating our game animals as that. I mean, as Toby said, they are all officially classed as pests.
Yeah.
And the government at time, over the years, they've gone on the record saying, we want to take this place back to birds and bats.
They want to eradicate them.
Yeah,
completely.
exactly. Like I was thinking the other day, like what is the difference between Australia and New Zealand? Because in some regards, it feels like it's a hunting culture, right?
Yep.
And we certainly have that. But in New Zealand, as you said, like it's more widely accepted, and it was like that, right, for a long time. And then there was this period where they came out with the eradicate tar, and then suddenly hunters, certainly for my generation anyway, it was the first time you sort of felt a bit of pressure, and Hunters United and the Game Animal Council came out, and it was one of the first times you'd seen hunters jump onto this sort of collective, hey, this is not okay. Like
Definitely.
we actually would love to be involved and help. And I think because we don't have state governments, we were able to engage at a higher level. And now you have the Game Animal Council, whose like their mandate is to liaise with the Minister of Conservation.
Yep.
And lobby. And it's not just like stop killing them. It's actually about like let's come up with a practical solution to manage this herd, and recognise that hunters not only are interested in being able to hunt bull tarp, but could be a massive resource.
And it's a big resource to bring people in as well, right? Like it creates a massive industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the pieces is that the monetization of animals essentially is what can save communities of animals. That's probably not the right word for it, communities, species of animals. But but then it also, as a second piece, like I think that's what brings in the human side to it. And I don't know, because in America, they've got this whole piece around hunting, right? You've got tags, you've got all of this stuff that makes it work, brings in billions of dollars for them, like literally $1 billion industry, versus
in Queensland, you're not allowed to hunt unless it's on private property. And so
Yeah.
there's no monetization whatsoever for the government. And so it's like, I honestly think if they just chuck monetization on it, it changes the whole piece as to what the value of this thing is, what the value of this critter is as a first piece. And there's two sides to that. There's the buyer, which would be the hunters, and then there's the seller, which is the government. And I think there's a big piece to that as a starting piece. But they've essentially just said they're a pest, we want to get rid of them, and it just completely ruins it for both sides in a sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I think it's a waste of resource. I mean, there's some really
100%.
cool examples.
There's starving people everywhere, right?
Yeah, well, that's where the Fiordland
Homeless.
Wapiti Foundation, they
Yep.
have done a couple of cull hunts where they've gone in and taken out reds and hybrids that they don't want in that area for the Wapiti, and then they've taken that meat and they've given it to I think they've given it to charities, haven't they? I think they did, yeah. And then the Game Animal Council they got 30 hunters into an area up in the Lake Sumner area, and
Yep.
they killed 130 odd hinds with 30 hunters, and it's free conservation work, but also the meat
exactly.
then gets taken out, and it's
Yep.
hunters having experience, and like, why wouldn't you engage with that?
Exactly, and that's the thing that we don't have here in Australia is the conservation side. Unless it's conducted by hunters in particular, like they're doing it themselves, it's not a thing. But really, that whole piece, if you were to go out and say to 30 hunters, hey, let's go in Queensland forest, we'll go and shoot 100 deer, we're going to give it to the homeless, like we'll make meals and whatever else, like that would be incredible, right? But it's not a thing, and I don't think it'd ever be a thing because they're just too worried about safety as a side of it. But also, I wonder how much of it is like a control piece, right? Like there's the control piece of there's so many deer that could literally feed probably Australia easily. But at the same time, it's like, well, we don't want you to do that because we want to make sure we've got money coming in.
I don't know about like New South Wales though, because the state forest to me,
And
as an
the state-
outsider, seemed like a massive resource. And not only that, you see discourse from the government saying it's a pest we want, they've classified them a pest, we want hunters to hunt them.
Yeah.
Then you go onto the DPR website and you have your game reports and you have the maps. Like, I think that's kind of cool, and it's
Definitely.
also kind of regulated for how many hunters can go in. Like the
yes.
Department of
You have
Conservation
so many
in New
people at
Zealand's
one time.
awesome.
Yeah.
But it's also like anyone can go anywhere, anytime, apart from the ballot blocks, which it's kind of cool as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is, and it's in New Zealand we've got a huge culture of entitlement,
Yeah.
and the Game Animal Council have been making noises about introducing tag systems and that sort of thing. And although it would be an awesome way to manage this resource going forward, there's something in it as Kiwis go, nah, we've been able to go wherever we want,
Yeah.
So long.
for whenever we want,
Yep.
and shoot whatever we want for a long time, And so I think we've got a long way to go to change that mentality.
Definitely.
But there are a lot of hunters, though, I think, are getting educated by shows like the the Meat Eater podcast and stuff
Yeah,
that they're talking
100%.
about.
Yep.
They're getting people talking about how do you manage herds. People are now knowing, like, well, actually, it doesn't make sense just to go and shoot bull tahr or just shoot big stags. You do have to focus on the females
You
for a
have to
fair
take
bit
the
to
hinds
actually
out.
have a manageable
Sorry,
population.
the females in general, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, realistically, I'd say I'm a little salty towards it in a sense because I am in Queensland. That's all I know. Like, I haven't actually done my DPI or anything like that. Like, I haven't gone down to New South and used the R license that's available to me. Whenever I've come to New South, I've usually done paid blocks or friends blocks. So, and it's just what I've done. But at the same time, I think because you're seeing parts of Australia get shut down, you're seeing, like Victoria, you can't actually share game meat. Like, it seems like it's kind of consistently getting tighter and tighter. They're tightening that belt around our waist at the moment. It's
Yeah.
interesting to watch happen in general.
I do think that the state forest might be a bit sort of underestimated as well, though.
Oh, 100%. I actually talked to, I never got him on the podcast. I wanted to. It was a forest, like manager type guy, what's the word? A ranger. And he was saying, like, it was literally, I think he was saying it was $100 million business or $100 million income stream for New South Wales government. I'm like, well, why the heck don't they open that up over Australia then? Like, that makes a lot of sense. It might have even been a $1 billion industry. Like, it was huge in regards to what they were bringing in from it. But that comes into everything. It's not just talking about hunting. It's talking about the full driving side, the bringing, like, all of the entities that it brings in to be able to do that. Essentially, it brings a lot of money in. I'm like, well, it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, it seems silly to me that they don't open it up everywhere else. And I think that's what New Zealand has really well, right? You guys there's so much public land that you can go to.
Well, the access is great, but the funding, I mean, it's free. I mean, to get a hunting permit in New Zealand for the Department of Conservation. So if I want to go and get my hunting license, I apply online.
Yep.
I tick all the boxes for all of the South Island, and then I can hunt the whole South Island for 3 months.
For 3 months.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost anything. It takes 5 minutes, right?
So that's as a resident. What about as a
No,
international?
anyone.
Anyone.
Yeah. And so I think we're missing a trick, right? If it was $20 a quarter and you had 100,000 people doing it,
Exactly.
that's phenomenal, mate. I don't. And you might probably say, well, residents maybe it's $20, and for guys that are flying in from America or wherever and spending big money, maybe pay a bit more because they're not taxpayers. I think that's fair as well. But
definitely $100 a quarter.
Yeah, and then that money funds conservation. It's exactly what happens in America.
Yeah.
They have that. They have to manage that because their deer are indigenous species, so they're treated differently anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it could be awesome. But it's again people going, well, I've hunted there forever, and I totally get that, right? I'm from a family of hunters all the way back.
Yeah.
I get it, and I've got people in my family with the same thing.
Yeah.
But if you go, well, I want my son to be able to hunt there, and I want him to be able to see a big bull tail walk out and be like blown away like I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I want that for him, but if we don't do something, then maybe that was not going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I've talked about this with buddies that we've been hunting with. We all get the sense that we will look back in 10, 20 years and think, that was the golden age. That was the golden age. We're in the golden age of New Zealand, of hunting in New Zealand at the moment, So, what the future brings, yet to be seen, I suppose.
Interesting to see, yeah. And so in regards to, places to hunt in New Zealand, if there was someone coming from overseas, let's talk about Australia because that's where we are, coming from Australia to hunt in New Zealand, let's say they were just going straight for the triad, the bull tail, chamois, and reds.
100%. You want to start in the South Island?
Yeah, the South Island. Where would you go?
Yeah, so we were discussing this over dinner earlier. I think the trio is a tough thing, The bull tail and the chamois, they live in a reasonably similar area. So on the west coast of New Zealand, rugged mountains, but really good access with a helicopter.
Yeah.
So from a cost perspective, it's a great place to start if you want to, fly in a whole group of you in and out for under $1,000, which is pretty unheard of. And then from there, we were hunting a block up the Whataroa about 5 weeks ago, and we saw tar and chamois in the same day. So West Coast
is that pretty unheard of?
Not on the West Coast. Yeah, they all hang out just at different elevations, and in terms of timings, you hit it May, June. They're both sort of their ruts are overlapping.
Yeah.
So it's a real doable thing.
That's incredible.
The adding the trifecta in for a quick trans-Tasman ditch that complicates things a little bit more because for us Kiwi hunters we some of us have been hunting years and years and years and haven't pulled the trigger or let an arrow slip on a big red stag, So East Coast holds some big red stags up the Rakai. Have got a great bloodline, but it's big country, like Toby said. You do your research, you look on Google Maps, you think we'll head up that ridge, we'll head that catchment and drop into that one, and you'll spend 3 days, you'll do a third of what you thought you'd do just because.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a big country.
Yeah, huge country. Yeah. But that's part of the appeal. That's what keeps us coming back. It's awesome,
Definitely.
So. It's a hard one though, because if you've got limited time, what do you do? Like a big red roaring stag, rutted up, is just like nothing like that noise,
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like I was telling Struan on the way up here, I made this mistake a few years ago and I still regret it. It was one of my early raw hunts, and I had a red stag below me. It was quite a long shot. I can't remember what it was, but it was quite far. But right below me was this massive black chamois with huge horns. It would have been the biggest one I've ever seen. And did I shoot the animal closest to me? No, I focused on the stag. I missed the shot and then just ruined everything. So, but
it's always the way hunting plays out, right?
Yeah. But then there's not, in my opinion, in New Zealand, there's nothing like a bull tail. Those things are unbelievable.
In regards to and I think here in Australia, there's definitely some hold of the hierarchy of animals, right? In New Zealand, is that tahr at the top? Is that the way it goes? Tahr, chamois, then reds? Or is there kind of a mix with that?
Yeah, I think it's really subject to opinion. Yeah. For me, I mean, chamois are the ultimate for me in terms of hunting, but others, they don't see the appeal. Toby said, the red stag and the raw, but no, I don't think there's any clear hierarchy. I think it's a pretty tough to call between those three.
I think here in Australia in particular, like, it kind of depends on what you've got access to, right? Like, a lot of people come to me and they're like, "Oh, red stag, it's definitely the hierarchy." I'm like, "Really? I would have thought of sambar, or like, it's the biggest deer, it's the hardest to find. Like, that seems to make more sense to me." And then everyone's like, "No, hog deer." You're like, "Oh, of course, those sneaky little buggers." And then it's subject.
From a deer species, I mean, red are way more common than anything in New Zealand.
Because fallow are also pretty common, right?
South Island, you've got fallow, and they a lot of them tend to sort of like escapees. They're pretty good at jumping high fence. There's a lot of escapee fallow deer
and
populations.
So you then get great genetics everywhere, or not quite
mixed, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some good blocks, that are especially I think in the North Island too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, North Islands, and then you've got a white two lots of whitetail.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually the only whitetail in the southern hemisphere in the South Island of New Zealand.
They call them the Sitka deer, right? Or is that different again?
Sitka whitetail, different again. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And so they're actually the same whitetail that you get over in America?
Yeah, but they don't get anywhere near as big because the climate and the feed's not as good for them as it is in America.
Huh.
Yeah,
and
you
they
actually
still
get
do
that in
the
America
croaking
too.
sound that the whitetail do over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
Not that I've hunted them, to be fair.
Yeah, it's hard case. I always remember as an American client that turned up at the guide's lodge.
Yeah.
And Shane had this whitetail on his wall that he'd shot from Stewart Island. It was this little thing, it had 8 points on it, and it was it might have risen up about 1.5 foot from the skull.
Yeah.
And the American client, he looks at it, he thinks, what's this on your wall for, And Shane's like, that's a huge whitetail for New Zealand,
wow.
you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how the benchmark
changes, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like the genetics and situation, like where they actually live, habitat, how much they can play on them. Yeah.
Yeah. But going back, I guess, what you were talking about before in terms of, what animals takes that
status, the
that
hierarchy.
status. Yeah. For me, a huge amount of it comes down to actually the hunt, and how that changes. And for me, there's nothing worse than scrubbing around in the bush, traveling 10 meters in 3 minutes. That's horrific for me. I'm an alpine hunter. I like to climb high and it's in that country where you're on top of the world. We're hunting right up next to Mount Cook. The highest mountain in New Zealand, high up in the snow, and it's to. The landscape's incredible, but then to see those animals in that landscape, sidling along just steep cliffs, and they're seeing what's over that next ridge. For me, that's what keeps me coming back. So that's why I guess I'm naturally drawn to tahr and chamois.
Takes it to the next level too. That next ridge, like I'm used to ridges that are they're a small molehill compared to the size of what you guys are doing.
I think it's not a good hunt unless there's a point in the hunt where you're like, why the hell am I doing this? You got to have that suffering a little bit. It makes the story afterwards.
At the same time, that obviously comes with some treacherous territory, right? So, have you guys lost friends? Is there some pretty close encounters that you've got stories from?
Yeah. So that trip I was just talking to you about up the Whareroa, tragically, several years ago, a good friend of mine, her flatmate, actually fell off a bluff up there and died.
Yeah,
and so it's a block that we've always wanted to get back to, just to kind of, I guess, pay our respects. And when we went up there, so we landed and we're sort of setting up camp, and we look up and there's sort of 3 big pinnacles, and his mate had come up and he actually erected a cross and a memorial. Wow. So we spent the day sort of hunting up towards that point and finally managed to make it and kind of pay our respects a little bit to him.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's certainly pretty sobering, to be fair, because like Toby says, there's always times where you just think, what am I doing in this situation? Whether it's always easier to go up than it is to go down.
Yeah.
And you think, it's only an animal, you know what I mean? So, we're all getting older. We've all got family, and a lot of us have kids and stuff.
Makes you think about it a lot more.
Hugely.
If you are wanting to go hunt New Zealand, you really want to make sure you've got everything you need. You want to make sure you definitely want like a PLB or like an Enreach, 100%.
Yeah.
You need one of those, man.
Yeah.
But also, like, I have no problem saying, you know what, guys, I'm just not feeling this. You know, there's a
100%.
storm coming in, or if you get an inkling this is not right,
It's very,
pull pin, man. You
it's
can come
very
back the next
different,
week.
right?
You
Like
know?
your storms can roll in pretty quickly because it's such a short coastline to coastline. It can just transition so quickly. Have you guys know who Adam Greentree is? Have you heard his stories about when he was in New Zealand and I think it's the EPIRB or whatever it is, the call out machine didn't work for him.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like on the mountain, he's like, I'm dead, I'm dying. He's like, I'm done here. And then it all worked out eventually. But yeah, he literally thought he was gone. He's like trying to call his wife and stuff to be like, I'm going, I'm sorry. Like, yeah.
I've definitely had moments of like, you know what, I just need to stop, take stock of what's going on, just calm down. We're actually okay here. We just need to make our way back down here and be calm. But, you know, you're really, really remote in these situations. You often want to be with people as well. Like
100%. Make it so much better to be with other friends.
Yeah. But that's like just circling back to like what makes a good hunt, what animals you want to be on. Like half the time for me, it's actually who you're with and what you're doing. Like I took my sister out for her first deer a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we were just on a farm block, tons of deer everywhere, like too many. But you know, we were driving into the hut. We saw a stag. She stalked into 100 meters, shot the stag. She's still wearing her Crocs from the truck, right? You know? But it was just such a cool thing for me to be there with her on her first animal.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah. It's funny because I've been at this for not long at all, 4.5 years, but now the rest of my family is starting to get interested, especially now that I've fed people from my family quite a lot of meat, like giving it to them in the freezers and stuff, and they're like, it's incredible, we love the meat. And now, like, my brothers-in-laws, my brother, my nephews, my nieces, like they're all starting to get pretty interested. Like, can we come out with you? I'm like, I'd love that. Like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I can't wait for those days. Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? It is definitely who you're with makes it such a different experience. Yeah. In regards to the chamois, like that's something I've not really talked about at all. I've talked a little bit about tar, but not heaps about chamois. Like, where do they like to hang out? Because they're not right at the very tops, are they? They're kind of midway on the mountains, aren't they, in general?
Yeah. I mean, as a rule, but like any animals, they don't all follow the rules. But as generally, they're sort of in that, I guess, subalpine belt. So if you think the tar are right at the top, and they can be literally right at the top of the mountain. Chamois often, especially on the west coast, kind of inhabit that scrubby part, between, I guess, the granity tops and then the thick bush, you know. And they're a really cool animal to hunt. I was talking to Toby on the way up here. In the rut, the bucks, they get really aggressive and they roam. That you can find them anywhere. You know, from down in the farmlands, they come right down into there. And I had a friend of mine. He used to always take a black towel when he went chamois hunting, and you'd spot a chamois, you know, a K away, a kilometre and a half away, and first thing he'd do is jump up in the air and he'd wave his hands around, and then he'd put the towel on his back and he'd walk around on his hands and knees, and he's had chamois spot him, and come all the way in from a K and a half.
They got telescopic vision, eh?
They've got very good vision, and he comes storming in, and they always seem real pissed. So I'm not sure if he, wants to fight him or root him or both, But it's
a pretty looking lady.
It's pretty incredible, you know.
Wow.
It's
And do they do calls or anything like that, or they just
they sort of whistle a bit, and I've never experienced it before, but I was on a hunt about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were hunting chamois, and we stalked in on this group of females just to get a good look at them. You know, we weren't gonna shoot anything, but they kept on looking down the valley, and I thought, what are they looking at? And then I heard bah, bah, like almost like a sheep. Yeah. And I didn't think anything of it, but it ended up being this big chamois buck that was trailing them. So, and he had only one thing on the mind, you know. So they do whistle at you. They do various noises, but they're actually an antelope. They're not a goat. A lot of people think they're a mountain goat.
Next question. There you go.
Yeah. So native to introduced. They were a gift from Austria.
Okay.
And so they've got those two stripes, which makes them really easy to spot often. And you often see the face looking at you before.
They're pretty cool looking animals.
They're very cool. So
they are actually easy to spot. Like, I mean, I'll hunt red deer and find them hard to spot at times. Like a big old red animal in the middle of the bush. You're like, where the fuck is it?
yeah, well, I mean, in summer, a chamois is they can be bright orange. They're tan.
Yeah, okay.
And then in a matter of months, they develop a really thick, woolly black coat. So but the white stripes on their face are a dead giveaway. So a lot of the time that's where you spot them
do
first.
just stand out. Yeah, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the actually as a front, and I guess this goes for both chamois and tar. How many hunts have you been on, especially because you would have been on a fair few of them, I'm sure, in this experience where they've been shot but not reclaimable as an animal?
Yeah, multiple,
Like it happens a lot. It's
it happens a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean,
like 3 in 1, or sorry, 1 in 3, or
you try not to, these days.
Yeah.
Certainly on big bull tar, I think. I mean, it's a bit of those learning curve we were talking about earlier as a young hunter. It's there. It's for a rifle hunter. The shot's there. Let's take it. But a big thing when it comes to hunting those animals is, okay, where is that animal going to fall?
Where's it go?
And so what is the point of this? If I'm pretty sure at this point, even before I pull the trigger or let the arrow go, then I'm not going to get it.
It's not only is it going to fall off a cliff. It's can I get to that ledge that it's going to settle on? And get back safely, right?
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, Grant had one that was he shot one and it slipped down a ravine. It was not recoverable.
Yeah.
And they had a guy with crampons. He wasn't able to get it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole situation, though, right? Make the call. This is not safe. I shouldn't do this. If you have got one on the ground that's in a spot you can't get,
it brings another element to it. And then on the other side is once you actually recover it, is it actually recoverable even though you've got it, right? Like, has it just been bashed and bruised and
they break horns, they do all sorts of things. Yeah.
They're so heavy too. The skin on them.
Oh yeah.
Oh my! Look, so
I guess to keep them warm.
we carted one out, and the skin was 17 kgs.
Wow.
I mean, and you put that in your pack, that's 25 kgs.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, exactly.
But they've just got such thick coats on them.
And they're small like a goat, right? Like they're not.
Well,
super
so
big.
this is the thing I was telling Struan. Like when I first went on a tar hunt, I said to the boys, I'm not really keen, guys. I want to go and shoot a big stag. I'll go and hunt the beech forest. You guys go off on tar. Because I'd been on a tar hunt before and we got surrounded by nannies. And the nannies, they're the size of goats, right? Well, within 10 minutes of leaving the truck, these two massive bull tar walk out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I've changed my mind, because they're like miniature buffalo. The forelegs on them are like the size of your arms. They're massive.
Wow.
And then they're just majestic too. They're one of the only animals to have a full mane, like a lion.
They're cool looking.
Yeah,
they're very cool looking.
And you just none of the pictures or videos I'd seen on YouTube or whatever just do justice to when you see that big thing walk out. It's like, holy heck.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so in regards to like when you're off hunting a chamois or a tar, you're not usually going to find another animal out there as such. Like you don't necessarily come across pigs or something like that when you're up in the hills, do you?
Not at that elevation, but certainly chamois, tar, and deer can all be found in the same catchment.
A lot of times
when it's out of rut season, or
that's right. Especially in the summer where they're all out in the open, they're all feeding up heavily. I mean, had times up on the west coast, up in the tops, where you literally have a chamois and a stag in the same spotter. And they seem to kind of coexist a bit, pretty good. Yeah. So
you also, like in the Canterbury rivers, you got to remember you might be going from like rolling hills to like alpine mountains over a period of half a day. Like you're traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
When you're going up there in the full drives and that, and you can come across a lot of different animals.
Yeah, cool. And in regards to April, May, June being your 3 ruts, then does that mean you're pretty much they're your 3 busiest months of being on the camera and out filming?
They were at a time when I was doing the guiding stuff.
Yep.
Now I tend to, because when I was working with the commercial hunting guides, I didn't hunt the rut for 4 years.
Yourself?
I didn't. I really started to miss it. So for me, and my wife knows this. It's a time where I block time out for that. You know what I mean?
So you're getting back to using your own equipment. You're getting actually
100%. Yeah. But yeah, no, it is definitely for there's definitely smatterings of shoots all through there. The red stag raw is a big one for me.
Yeah.
For the likes of bushbuck and for other clients around that hunting scene. But it's nice to be back to what I enjoy, you know, because I sort of missed it there for a bit.
Definitely. And so on that front, like obviously out filming, you get to see so much and you get to be out with a lot of hunters, but what side do you actually like more? Like, do you like hunting more for yourself, or do you enjoy just as much doing the filming and seeing someone else achieve it?
I think I think now I get more satisfaction by taking people out that have never done it before. You know what I mean? So, I got a couple of mates from the North Island that we got there spearfishing and they come down hunting, you know, and we're slowly just ticking off. Josh got a 10.25 inch chamois, which is the biggest chamois I've ever even laid eyes on, you know what I mean? So for me, I don't pull the trigger that much anymore when I hunt for myself, you know. So I'd rather have a camera in hand or actually be lining a friend of ours up on something.
Most of the hunting I see on you running the schnauzers up in the mountains, man?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we have a couple of me and my best mate. We've got a couple of we call them the Alpine turtles, miniature schnauzers, and we're trying to break the stereotype of small hunting dogs. But they come everywhere with me.
Yeah, wow.
Right? Yeah. So we had a good trip a couple of years ago where we stuffed this 5 kilo little miniature schnauzer in the back of a pack, and we motorbiked in 25 k's, and she was pretty pissed at the end of it. But she likes the journey. She likes the once she gets out and a bit of a run around the hills and chasing some deer and stuff.
That's
so
incredible.
She's a battler swimming through those mountain streams, man.
So what, they bark when they find them, or
bro, they're there for to keep us warm at night. We pop down the sleeping bags, and that's about the
old foot dog.
That's the value that they bring to the trip, really. So yeah.
So there's no actual training in regards to hunting dogs as such.
It's entertainment value more than anything, eh?
Oh look, Schnauzer isn't your good hunting dog, but I mean, in New Zealand, you know, we do use dogs for hunting. We do use dogs to indicate deer, and the guys that put a huge amount of time into that, they get some great results out of that.
I think that's the thing, right? It's a big time investment. Like, I think any dog is really like getting a good, apart from some of the working dogs in general, but I mean, even they get a lot of time put into them. But it's like, I've seen some farmers, they'll try to work a dog in with their crew, and if it doesn't adjust, it either gets given away or shot. Like, that's just the mentality of it versus the city. Like, there's so many shithead dogs about, and it's so hard to actually train a dog because you have to put in so much time and effort. And there's especially all the COVID dogs, right? You see all these dogs that came in during COVID. Now all these people are no longer at home, and all their dogs are just anxious and overridden. They're like, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but yeah, I can imagine getting a dog to be hunting ready. Like, that's next level once again.
Yeah, I mean, I've hunted with mates that they've really, really well trained Vizslers, GSPs, hitting dogs as pointers, you know, and they're literally working the top of ridge lines, with an updraft, and the dog will lock up and it'll indicate, and there's deer there. There's always deer there. You know, within 20, 50 yards, you're stalking down, and the success rates is incredible. And you just think, how many deer are we walking past? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I had a poorly trained visitor, and he was still good at indicating deer. You know, we rescued him though, so he had bad habits, but he would still put us onto deer. One day we were hunting up this ridge. One ridge we like to go up. It's called Pig Face. You get up onto this top ridge, and then you get into this. There's always pigs on it. Mm-hmm. And he was up in front, and he's sort of indicating, and then I look behind me. There's a pig like 5 meters behind me. I'm like, well, what? He used this dog, so I shot the pig, and then we go a bit further, and he walks past a rabbit, and he's still indicating, like, this dog is a waste of time. And then we go another 100 metres, and there was 4 deer. He'd been indicating the whole time past 2 other. He'd never been trained. They just naturally, instinctively do it. It was awesome. I wish he'd been trained properly. You could have brought him over.
That's so cool. Yeah, we had a ridgeback, and he'd do the indications all the time, a little point with the elbow or whatever, the wrist. It's pretty cool to watch. Yeah. I don't know what he'd do it at because he was just a town dog, but yeah.
The pistol actually used to indicate flies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. And so someone looking to go over to New Zealand for a hunt, obviously there's different levels of it, but what's kind of like the basis that you need to have, like in regards to basic gear you need to be able to go out? Let's say you're doing like a 1 week backpack hunt. What's like the basics you're expecting someone to have when they go out for a hunt like that?
Probably the bushback catalogue, eh?
I'll believe you sell out.
I think you definitely want a decent pack, right? And you want a really good tent, and you want a really good sleeping bag. You want to be able to duck into that safety net if shit turns south.
Definitely.
I've always carried a slightly heavier setup for that reason. If something goes wrong or it gets real cold, I can jump into the tent, and then from there, it's your layering system, it's your first aid kit, it's your PLB.
Yeah.
Struan, like what do you got, man? Like,
yeah, all of those are great things. I mean,
as a layering system, in regards to that, like, do you want to dive into that a little bit more? So you're talking thermals, you're talking base, like a layer on top of that, plus then like a puffer jacket or something, or even more.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me in the winter, I've always have a layer of thermals as a backup. A light polar fleece, a light down jacket, then a heavy down jacket as well, plus your rain gear.
rain gear.
But I always pack and I think, this is a heavy pack. But the amount of times I've been out and the weather's changed, and I think, I'm wearing all my clothes and there's nothing left in my pack, and that's not a great feeling, to be honest. So it's, I guess, depending on the time.
And you're still cold.
Well, I got to keep moving, But depending on the time of the year, you don't underestimate it, I think.
Yeah.
Get an old roll mat and cut the end off it and use it as a seat when you're in the snow. Like, nothing better than a seat. Like
what did you say? A roll mat?
Like, old sleeping mat, old foam mats, a bit of foam to sit on when you're in the mountains. Don't underestimate that as well. Like, you get pretty cold sitting there glassing for a couple of hours.
I can imagine. Yeah, actually, of course.
But it's just knowing a bit about mountain safety. Definitely pay attention to the forecast. It's really important.
And then food-wise, you just take in dehydrated meals? Is that what you pretty much live off in the mountains?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'm a dehydrated meal in the evening, and then just cheese and crackers all day, really. But I mean, my mates give me a lot of shit for not running on a whole lot. So I think I probably can't speak to that.
I don't know about that. I tend to sort of I use the ration packs a little bit.
Yeah.
The wet food. But if you're flying in somewhere, you have a bit more sort of luxury to carry in a little bit, or if you got something to carry it in for you, it's
I think my number one piece of advice for someone coming over to New Zealand hunting would I guess, revisiting what Toby said, is around having that EPIRB, that PLB.
Yeah.
And then the second one is download an app called NZ Topo 50. It's going to cost you about $10. Yeah. It's a more accurate live topo that works offline. That doesn't need signal, doesn't need anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more accurate than most of your Garmin's, your rhinos and stuff out there. And a great example of how this saved us is, we flew into the West Coast. We were so excited. We flew in first thing. We dumped our gear and we started climbing. And I marked camp on the app. We climbed up. We climbed up through this bluff system where there was only one place to climb up. We ended up shooting a tar and a chamois right up in the tops, and we came down in the dark. But we hadn't. So we had camp. We had camp that we were going to aim for.
Yeah.
But we had nothing else. So on this app as well, you can track yourself. So you can start recording that track.
Yeah.
And so we were walking backwards and forwards across the top of this big bluff system, looking down with the headlight, trying to work out the way we came up.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was horrific.
I've been in that situation on small scale, like not even big hills, and it's scary enough. You're like, oh shit, are we going to be here all night long? Like, it's just
Exactly.
But that's
and
the
so
whole thing.
if you can have that confidence, I guess, of I've been up here before, I know where I left my pack, I know where camp is, I know where I'm heading, I'm going down the wrong ridge, I'm going down the right ridge, in just a small little $10 app on your phone. Honestly, it's the best money that you ever spend.
That's incredible.
In your pack, though, like if you want to make sure you've got something so that if you do have to stay out the night, you can. Like don't get yourself in a situation where you can't back out.
Yeah.
But like, other than that, like I don't want to be all doom and gloom. But what I would also say is that the hunting community, if you're genuinely invested in it, right? If you're on, like we chatted, right? We were chatting for 6 months before we teed up this trip.
Yeah.
So just chat to people online and ask questions and comment and give advice as well. You'll find people that'll take you out hunting or give you advice on where to go.
100%.
Like
I know a fair few people that are farmers over there, and they're like, mate, come stay with us.
Yeah.
You stay here. We'll go hunting. Like
100%.
you can hunt on our block. You can hunt straight into the forestry up the back. Like it's great. I'm like, cool. Like we'll make it happen one day.
A lot of Kiwi hunters would be really willing to take you out and show you around, or at least give you advice, man. Like it's a big country, and the public land that you can hunt, it's massive.
But it's interesting you're talking about like not many bow hunters as such yet. What do you reckon the reason for that is? Just because of the terrain in general? The extremities of it?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, I'm speaking as not a bow hunter myself. I had quite a lot of experience bow hunting, filming hunters and hunting with other guys. I think I was telling Toby a story on the way here, just around a miss on it. Well, a mate of mine, he wounded a chamois not long ago on the tops.
With
and we sort of had
rifle?
No, with a bow.
With the bow.
So he got really close in. He got in sort of within 20, 25 yards, and just managed to clip a bit of vegetation on the way through, and the shot went a bit far back, and the chamois darted off into the scrub, but it's I know I've seen animals drop within 4 seconds of when it all goes well. But the trouble is, in 4 seconds in that terrain, the animal can be gone. It's thick scrub. So certain areas just don't lend themselves to bow hunting in New Zealand. In saying that, the people that do, the community that does, I think that drives them even more. It's the challenge.
100%. I think so. I think it's growing. I think it's growing with the likes of social media as well. So people are trying it. I mean, for me, it appeals to me because it's a new challenge. Actually on this road trip we did, I think I was talking to you, Matty. This road trip to New Zealand this year just gone, I had booked in a fly-in trip with my brother-in-law to be and one of my best mates. And 3 weeks out, I was like, okay, I'm going to go into the garage. I'm going to do the blind barrel shooting at 2 meters, and I'm just going to focus on the release. And I released an arrow, and it was all good. And then I released the next arrow, and my bow blew up. I bent the cams, and I went to my wife like, my bow's like just blown to bits here. Like, I'm going to have to get it fixed. And she's like, oh, well, wait till after the trip, though, because we want to save money for this trip. I was like, oh, no, like, I'm going hunting. And then she's like, I don't understand. I'm like, oh, sorry, let me rephrase it. I'm going bow hunting. And she said, why don't you just use a rifle? I'm like, oh, no, like, I've been working on this for like a year. Like, I've been working towards a goal. She's like, well, what does it matter? And she's like a really good squash player, so I dig the hole deeper. I'm like, well, babe, it's like you train for like a squash tournament for a year, and you break your racket, and I give you a tennis racket. She's like, it's not the same. I'm like, well, it kind of is. So like, it's that challenge, and there was no way I would have got anywhere near the satisfaction of taking a rifle into the mountains on the exact same trip, because I know it's going to be harder. I know it's going to be more challenging to get that shot right and secure the animal, but it's what I love about it.
Yeah, definitely. So on the other side of that, Struan, as a photographer, videographer that's been with a lot of hunters, what do you see as the difference from going from the rifle stuff going with the bows? Like, do you see a difference in skills, a difference in like the whole hunt playing out as such? Because really a lot of people say that a bow hunter's journey starts where the rifle finishes, but it's not necessarily the case. There's still a lot of skill to both. But yeah, I'd be intrigued to see, because from someone who's come up as a background of with a gun, like to then have to step into it with the bow, like what differences you kind of really found with that.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. I think I've seen a lot of bow hunters make the same mistakes as a lot of rifle hunters do.
Definitely.
Careless shots. It's you're thinking you're going to hit that stag at 400 meters with your 308 and wounding that thing, and same thing with bow hunters. It's probably bow rifle. It's not a question of that, but it's just kind of actually kind of thinking about what you're doing and I guess not working outside your skill to start with. I think when I was doing the guiding stuff, these American clients, they were over here. They wanted to get their animal. They just needed to get a bow into it.
Didn't matter what it was, just get there.
A lot of pressure.
And it didn't matter how they got it on the ground. And we saw some really horrible stuff, man. We saw some really sad stuff.
Imagine.
And that's sort of, I probably haven't had the best experience with bow hunters because of that, But working and hunting with some good friends that are hunters, a fellow guy from the States that comes over here every now and then. I can see the appeal. He He gets in real close. You know, he spends an hour or two just sneaking in, and the rifle hunter to me is like, come on, man, we could be at the top of the mountain by now. But, I'm slowly coming around to it, yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Corey's just come back, and his hands are all bloodied. You've been gone for literally not even an hour yet. What did you get into? You shot 3 pigs. Not just one, but 3. Yeah, look at this. Your arrows are all missing. What happened? That's hilarious. Where? Just in the paddock here? That's hilarious. That's so good. And that's the weekend that we're in for, boys. I'm excited.
Mate, fizzing at the bung.
But with that being said, we might cut it short here because we've got a lot more to talk about over the next few days. And Struan, you look like your eyes are falling out of your head. You're ready for bed, which I understand. I'm also feeling a bit the same after the long ass drive
today. I might go hunting, eh?
I know. That's the other thing.
Success rate,
or we could just all get kitted up and go.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm keen.
Either way, we'll have you back on definitely over the next few days because we need to hear all about the new journeys, the Australian journeys in general, and also Toby, you getting your first few animals down here in Australia. So I'm excited for that.
I hope so.
I'm
very good. More to come.
Yeah, definitely.
But thanks for having us on, man, and thanks for teeing this up. Like, it's phenomenal.
Likewise,
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win-win. All situations. I think we're in for a great weekend, and I think it's cool to kind of just talk a little bit about New Zealand. Like, really, it's so accessible for us, and right now, probably the flights are probably more expensive than they've ever been. But still, I think that's going to drop back down. Like, I remember I've gone snowboarding in New Zealand so much. I fucking love that place. Queenstown's one of my favorite places on earth I've visited, and I've gone all over the world, right? Yeah. But within saying that, like, I remember paying $200 for flights. Like, I think, $200 return.
Not quite that now, but honestly, like, you should definitely go. I mean, whether you're paying for a guide or you're going with someone local or you're doing it yourself, like, there's so many resources online as well. As Struan said, like, get on those maps and do the online research, look at the forums, chat to people, and you'll have such a good time. It's just epic country.
I think it's just so accessible for us as Australians in particular. But I mean, like, we've got such great country here, but then there's also just access for such. Just keep it down, thanks, mate. Such great country just over there as well. No, but dudes, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great.
Thanks, man.
That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you are enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.